Let's bring in James Morrow, host of the US Report on Sky News. James, let's start with the debate. What was your assessment of the candidates' performance? Is there any standout star here, do you think, who's shaping up to be a real contender against Donald Trump for the nomination?
Well, I think we've got to admit the fact that nobody on this stage is likely to be the nominee. But that doesn't mean there weren't a lot of interesting things here that happened on this debate stage. The most interesting thing to me here is that the tactics are playing out in this sort of pro-anti-Trump kind of division within the party. And so you had two players in that. Chris Christie, on the one hand, who is trying to essentially do everything he could to block a Trump nomination. And he was running up hard against Vivek Ramaswamy, the young candidate, the young tech entrepreneur who's saying that we need generational change, who Chris Christie lambasted as being sort of a chat GPT candidate. But Ramaswamy, of course, what he's trying to do is take as much attention away as possible from Ron DeSantis, who's basically still the only serious challenger that exists, I think, in that field for Donald Trump.
Well, as you say, I mean, they got pretty feisty, didn't they? There were some pretty big differences between the candidates' stances when it comes to some major policy issues, from abortion to the war in Ukraine. We like to say here in Australia that the Liberal Party is a broad church, but the Republican Party in the US seems even broader.
Well, I mean, this was one of the things that I find really, really interesting here, is that there's this whole fight within the Republican Party about American foreign policy. It's been a long time since we've had a foreign policy election, but now, of course, with the war in Ukraine, China's threats to Taiwan, everything else, which matters a lot to Australia, by the way, the stance America takes on that. The thing is here is that Vivek Ramaswamy plays a very isolationist line. He comes out and says things about why is money being sent to Ukraine when it's not being sent to the fire victims in Maui and elsewhere. Got a fairly mixed response from the crowd, I have to say. I thought it might have done better. Of course, that's the Trump line on all of these things. Nikki Haley, I thought, was actually the most star performer when it came to foreign policy. And she made a case, I think, for a more sort of involved America. And there does still seem to be, despite Trump's isolationism, a lot of sympathy for that within Republican ranks.
What did you make of her point that we heard there in Trudeau's package earlier, where she said Trump is the most disliked politician in America, essentially saying to the party he can't win against Joe Biden? I mean, is that realistic?
Well, Look, that's the conventional wisdom, but what we have seen, for the last 8 years is that the conventional wisdom about Donald Trump is very often wrong. I mean, that's what they said about him in 2016. They said there was no way that he could win. 2020 wound up going the other way, but, he made a very large show of it in terms of the number of votes that he got, which shows that there's a lot of people out there who would vote for him, and I think that the real error, the category error that the Democrats are making in this is trying to make Trump, they're making him a bigger candidate every single time that they indict him, every time that they, try and, put him in handcuffs. We're going to see tonight he's going to turn himself into that courthouse in Georgia, which is going to be another show. He deliberately, by the way, said, I want to have this done in prime time so that everybody in America can see it. So, he has a very clear strategy here that all of these attacks are only going to make him stronger. I think there is really something to that. But the problem is that when the Democrats go down this road where they try to make the opposition leader criminal, they criminalize the opposition because essentially they question the results of the election, which is something Democrats have been doing. Everybody does it, from time to time. The Democrats did it most famously in 2000 when they fought to get Al Gore to win against George W. Bush in the Supreme Court. So, I mean, this is not unprecedented. What's happening here, though, is that they're going to create the situation, I think, where no matter who wins the next election, if Biden and Trump are the candidates, half the country is not going to accept the results. This is a recipe for a really divided America, and that's a much bigger problem, I think, than whoever is the next president.
Yeah, as you say, Trump is the ultimate showman, really. It was probably a pretty classic move to steal the debate's thunder by sitting down for that big interview with Tucker Carlson. Did we learn anything new from Trump in that interview? Any indication as to just how he plans to tackle some of those legal woes you alluded to there while also running for president?
Well, look, I mean, the thing that he said there was all BS, to use the polite term for what he used. That's what he's always going to say. I mean, I thought some of the more interesting things were some of the other things that came out. It was a very big, wide-ranging sort of interview. We're going to be having a bit of that, I think, tomorrow on the U.S. Report at 8. But, his general worldview is very much one where he is the victim. He is being persecuted by all of these different, forces out there that are trying to stop him from representing the American people. And I think that this is a really interesting thing. Again, Trump is still positioning himself as the candidate of working people, of the ordinary American. And we have to step back and just remember the perspective on this. Once upon a time, the Democrats were the party of the working American, the ordinary American. And he has very cleverly, I think, pointed out and exploited that fact that the Democrats have moved from that position to being really the party of the wealthy, the elite, the academic classes, the CEO classes, and they're completely disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people.
And in terms of that interview, James, how telling do you think it was when you look at the optics? It seems like a few old wounds seem to have healed there. Trump choosing Tucker Carlson to be the interviewer for one thing, hosting the interview on X, formerly known as Twitter, as another. I mean, as we know, Donald Trump has a long history with both that interviewer and that platform.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think it's quite a symbiotic relationship there between Trump and Tucker. They kind of need each other to get each other's message out and to get, the views for Tucker Carlson's program, and of course also the continued support for Trump. I thought it was interesting that they chose to air it or put it to air 5 minutes before the debate started. So everybody had this kind of thing. What do we do? We watch the debate and then we watch Trump, or we watch Trump and then we watch the debate. And it racked up something like 75 million views in the first few minutes. So it's a pretty big platform he's got there.